Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
We'll just wait till we've got a couple of people. We're actually live now. We'll just wait till we've got a couple of people on board, but it looks like we're live. Are we live, friends? Yes, we are. Well, jeepers, I've got the incredible Rod Dixon as our guest today. Welcome, Rod.
Yeah, day, Sean. Yeah. It's not, I don't know whether I'm incredible. I think that's not what my friends say.
I'm a bit starstruck today, so I'll just have to sort of calm down a little bit. But I do want to give you a really good intro, because there are some people that'll be watching who may be a little bit younger than me and going, "Who's Rod Dixon?" if they've been on another planet. So let me just introduce you. So Rod first represented New Zealand in running at the Summer Olympics in Munich in 1972, where he got a.
I have to correct you, Sean. 1971. 71 was a world cross country.
1971.
Yes.
I'm off the flight.
That's 1971.
So the Summer Olympics in Munich were what year?
72.
72, right, gotcha. And you got a bronze there. In 74, you finished fourth in the 1,500 meters at the Commonwealth Games.
Christchurch, yes.
Which was the fifth fastest time in history at that point, wasn't it? In 1975, by then you were running the 5,000 meters, and in that year you were ranked the first in the world.
Yes.
1982, you decide that you'll go and might go and check out this thing called the New York Marathon. So you went out there and just sort of had a look at it, had a bit of a nosy, and went, "Oh, that's quite good. I might come back next year." And in 1983, you did okay. We'll talk about that later. Just how you went. You did reasonably well, though. I can tell you that. I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but you did okay. So why don't we start in 1960? In 1960, you had a very special guest come to your school. Can you remember who that was? I haven't got him here today, unfortunately. But who was he, and what did he say to the kids that day?
It's Sir Edmund Hillary came to Tahunanui School, Nelson, and it was, of course, we weren't told he would be coming. We all were in the school ground, and of course they arrived, and of course he got out, and we all knew who he was, and it was just like, wow. And he told us, he talked for a good 10, 15 minutes, probably 10 minutes. But one thing we did hear, and the teachers gathered, was that he told us kids that Mount Everest wasn't high enough for your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations. And that was on the blackboard the blackboard in those days, in school, in classroom, and that was one of my defining moments. We thought that was pretty cool. He wasn't on the $5 banknote at those days, but so 12 years later, at the Olympic Games, winning a medal. And I remember NZPA, and it might have been Ron Polanski, asked me who were my heroes and who was my inspiration and I said, well, my brother John is my hero. Brother John, is my hero. And Sir Edmund Hillary was my inspiration.
Wow, that's cool.
They said, well, you've got to tell him that. And I said, oh, I don't think you can go and tell. I said, you can't, you don't do that. And they said, well, actually, in fact, I think I might have said, well, you can't call the Queen and you can't call Sir Edmund. It's like, but somebody, it might have been right, and he said, have a look at the Auckland phone book. Here it is. Hillary Edmund Percival, 282A Remuera Road, Auckland. Now, I lived in Nelson, but the next time I was in Auckland, I wasn't going to call. I went round and knocked on the door.
Wow.
And Lady Hillary came to the door and she said, just a moment, young man. And then Sir Edmund came to the door and go, oh my gosh. And I So I just had to tell him that I went to the Olympics last year, and I reached into my pocket and pulled out the medal and gave it to him, and he looked at it, and I said, "This is just to support my story." And he looked at it and he said, "Wow." He said, "This is very, very fine, young man." He said, "Will you promise me one thing?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Will you inspire the next generation for me?"
I love it.
I said, "Oh my gosh, I'll do that. If you really want me to do that, I will." And then he gave me the medal back and closed the door. And it was like, whoa, what do I do now? But as my mother, Marion, said, let it go, hold on to the goal, but let go of the timing.
What did you call that?
Well, hold on to the goal of inspiring the kids, but let go of the timing, because you don't know when it's going to happen.
Right. Yes. Gotcha.
And so, and it's I think that's one of the things I've learned in life. You know, hold on to the goal of doing something, but let go of the timing. You can't get things just when you want them. They will come to you in their own time, in their own energy, in their own spirit. Sorry?
Are you a spiritual person, or is this just things that you've learned?
No, I think, yes, more spiritual than religious. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Hey, can we circle back? Because when I was preparing for this interview, which I think is the first interview I've ever prepared for, I thought it was fascinating the relationship between you and your brother John, because John really had a hell of a lot to do with getting you to Munich, didn't he? And you're the first to say that. I mean, he smart guy.
Yeah, and the beauty of it, he was coached by George McKenzie, who is the brother of Dave McKenzie, 1967 Boston Marathon winner and New Zealand Marathon champion, and they were disciples of Arthur Lydiard.
Right.
And when Arthur Lydiard, under the Rothmans brand, would come around to clubs throughout New Zealand. Now, just remember that Rothmans had a headquarters, New Zealand headquarters in Motueka in Nelson. And so Lydiard was obviously spending a lot of time at the corporation, and he came to our running club and coached the coaches. So my brother, who is 4 years older than me, understood the principles and philosophy of Lydiard. I was a little bit young, but John understood it, and combined with that, with George McKenzie and this great history of New Zealand, we were able to have a journey from little Nelson, just incredible. And I also too have got to give full credit to the running club, which was the Nelson Amateur Athletic Harrier and Cycling Club, which was formed in 1896.
Oh wow, love it.
To inspire the community in running and fitness and health and wellness. And that was happening when I was 10 years old. I don't know where we went wrong, but man.
So didn't you have to win the trial, didn't you, to make it to Munich? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And did John actually run the trial with you, or have I got that wrong?
Yes. No, he did. He did. Yeah. We ran the nationals, and Tony Polhill, I was first, as he was first, I was second, with about a 10% between us. But the fact that Tony had won the national championships was a big plus for him, perhaps not to have to go and run the trials. So really it was up to me. I hadn't run an Olympic qualifying time, so I had to go to the Olympic trials and run the qualifying time to be considered. Now, I had broken the 4-minute mile in Lower Hutt in Wellington, beating Kevin Ross and Dick Taylor and a few others. So that was a good thing, but it wasn't going to be the thing that took me to the Olympic team. And so we went to Auckland for the Olympic trials, and John, who probably could have run in the Olympic qualifying for 5,000 meters, John gave up his opportunity to make sure at least one of us had the best chance. And John went out there and he set that pace exactly what we had to do. And with about 300 meters to go,
he told you to run.
He moved over and he said 2 words, but I can't repeat those. And down I went. And I remember going around the bottom turn to go home straight. And the next thing I hear his voice again yelling at me. And I go, oh my gosh, how did he get over here so fast? But it shocked me into sprinting even harder. And I crossed the line. I won the trials and I made the qualifying time. So now it was up to the selectors to. I done everything I could. I broke in the 4-minute mile, very close in the national championships, won the Olympic trials and qualified. And the year before, of course, I finished 10th in the world in world cross country. So I think all those points started to add up in a good way.
Yeah. In fact, just in researching this, I think people that, aren't running experts like me probably don't realize this about you, is that you were a fantastic cross-country runner. I mean, John Walker describes you as the best at cross-country, because he says that when you were doing cross-country, you'd be running along, the next minute it's like, oh, where'd Rod go? You were so strong, you could put the foot down at any minute and you're away.
Yeah, and the cross country was born about from the Harriers, the running club. We called it Run Club, but it was the Harrier Club in those days. And cross country I was fascinated, but I connected to cross country because I just loved to run. In fact, I won a Nelson Championships in bare feet, but they didn't tell me around the back of the course was a patch of gorse. So, of course, I had splinters and thistles and gorse thorns in my feet, but that didn't stop me. But there was something about running in the cross country, and I love cross country where we ran and jumped over gates and ran through mud and through water and up the hill and across the hill. And I remember our coach Kerry Williams told us that he was a 5-time New Zealand champion, and he came and took us young kids for our runs, and he came up to this fence and he said, now this is a barbed wire fence, and you see it's got electric on it too. He said, there's only 10% ability and 90% guts to get over this. So you had to jump high enough, or you're going to lose a few things.
Hey, let's go back to tell me that experience at the 1972 Munich Olympics. Talk me through that and the race. Must have been amazing.
Well, it was pretty. It was pretty special. Traveling with Jack Foster, the legend of marathoning, and Dave McKenzie. And Terry Manners was the 3rd member on the Olympic marathon team. And then, people like Gavin Thorley and Les Mills and Graham Davey, who was our manager. And we traveled through Europe. Dick Quacks was there. Dick Taylor, what a character Dick Taylor was, or still is. And we traveled to United Kingdom, and then we went into Scandinavia, caught up with Arthur Lydian in Denmark, Stockholm, and then off to Munich for the Olympic Games. So it really was an incredible journey, very inspiring time with all these great athletes and running these international track meets against the world's best athletes. And of course, going into the village in Munich, it was just like, it felt like going into, well, kids like going to Disneyland. It was like going into Wonderland for me. It was amazing. And just been inspired by everybody. And at the moment, to think, that this is what Jack Lovelock did, and Peter Snell and Murray Hilberg and Bill Bailey and Barry McGee and all these incredible athletes before me had already set pathway. And it was a journey that I was born to do. I'm sure it was.
So talk me through the race.
Okay, well, so we had 3 races in 3 days: heat, semi, and final. The first heat, first 2 runners, and the first 2 from each heat went through to the semi-final, and then the fastest 3 from those heats would go through to the semi-finals. And here I am in the heat with Kit Kaino, the Olympic champion, and Jim Ryan, the world record holder. And we've only got 2 athletes to go to the next round. I go, wow, that's pretty overpowering. So, but, you know, remember we were able to make phone calls. We had to book the phone call in and talk with John. And John said, this is what you have trained for, and focus on the first round and focus on being up there with the leaders. He said, and you're very lucky because you've got Kip Kaino, who we know how he runs, and he's more of a strength runner than a speed runner. So when Kaino moves, move with him. And so that was my goal, was when Kaino moved, I moved. And sure enough, we were able to get to the front. And the final lap, I was able to finish second to him, running my fastest time ever, and qualifying for the semi-finals. Now, the semi-finals is the next day. And there again, I went through much the same thing. The idea is to get through in the first 3, to be focused on getting through the final. Now, our goal really wasn't to, it was to get through each round. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, because everything's gone black.
No, we've still got you.
Oh, you got me? Okay.
Yep.
I can't. I've got nothing on my screen, so I'll just be talking.
And we can hear you.
Oh, here we are. I'm back again. I just had to shake the mouse.
Love it.
So in the semi-final, I was very aware that this was going to be a different race because Kaino and more Europeans were going to be in the race, which meant they wanted it to be slower and kick fast. But once again, John said, beware of this and be up with the leaders the whole time. Don't think you can out sprint these guys. You've got to be up there with the leaders and run with the leaders the whole way. Don't just run the last lap, run the whole way. This is 1,500 meters. And the next thing is I'm up alongside Basila, the Finn, and we're stride for stride. And I won that semi-final. And there again, ran my fastest personal best time. It was just incredible. So, but the thing is, what we did know is that my racing, my running was based on strength. A lot of runners base their running on speed. They get their speed from doing speed. I got my speed from strength.
Right.
So as running 3 races in 3 days, it was good for me because I was a strength runner rather than a speed runner. And but what I remember is at the morning of the race, Arthur Lydiard, Bill Bailey, and Murray Hilberg came to visit all the athletes. And I remember Bill Bailey taking me aside with Arthur, and they said, "There's a medal there for you. You decide what color it is." I go, "Whoa!" It was pretty powerful. So over I went, and it was interesting because after the warm up, and they asked you to come and take your sweats off and put all into a basket, and each basket had a number, and I remember the basket I was given was number 3, so that was pretty cool.
That's
so
awesome.
I then once again with Kaino in the race, I knew what I had to do, and I had to be very, very close to Kaino, no matter what happened. And as the race unfolded, Kaino was actually behind us all, just watching. And then coming onto the third lap, he moved through and we all chased him. We knew what was going to happen now. The last half was running much faster than the first half. And that was something that suited me anyway. So the race unfolded. I got checked by Mike Boyd, who passed me and then stepped in front of me, and I had to double step. And at that time, Kino and Buster got away, made 2 or 3 yards on me, and then I came around Boyd and started to catch Kino, but just ran out of distance. But man crossing that finish line. But I do remember in the first 3 days when the New Zealand Olympic rowing 8 won the gold medal. And I remember going to welcome them back to the village. And I remember Athol Earl put his medal around my neck. And he said, "You go out and get one of these."
Wow.
So the first thing I did when I crossed the finish line, I turned and looked up into the stand with all the Kiwis, and they were going wild. And I remember I did we're going to have a drink tonight. So that was pretty amazing. And they all came down and congratulated me.
Now, when you think back to that, because it just gave me goosebumps on my face.
Oh, yeah. I got tears in my eyes. Yeah. No,
really?
It's incredible. Yeah.
Must have been amazing.
So those moments, Sean, are just so in this in the heart.
Yeah.
And you can't,
Yeah.
It's an amazing journey. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
It's the love of what I did.
I've got so many damn questions for you. It's not funny. So can we move on to the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, only 74.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm gonna flip you back to 73 because that was when I talked John Walker into coming to Europe with us.
Yes.
And we went to the Pan Pacific Games in Toronto, and then we went on to Europe. We left the team. The team came back to New Zealand, and Dick Quacks, Dixon, Walker, Tony Polhill. We went on to Europe and started our campaign in the United Kingdom, running the British Championships, and then went on to Europe. And 73, I won the British 1500 meter championships. And of course, earlier that year, I'd been there for the World Cross Country, and I'd won the British Cross Country Championships. And nobody had ever done that in 1 year, won the British Cross Country and the 1500 meters. So that was something that gave me confidence when you read about it. But certainly we knew that we were doing the right thing. And so we traveled through, and this young guy, Walker, I noticed that he was just, he was right there, and he was in training and in the racing. John was right there. And then a couple of times he won a couple of good races. He gave me a couple of lessons, and that friendship began really in those days of traveling and racing and training and an incredible journey. So really, as we came into 74, very successful 73 season in Europe, and we got the experience that we wanted, we knew. And then, of course, coming into the 74 Commonwealth Games. And about 3 weeks before, I was running cross country up in the back of Nelson and took a tumble over a bank and it really hurt my back. And so I was in therapy and couldn't go for the opening of the Commonwealth Games. I was still getting therapy, and I didn't even know whether I was going to be able to run. But this chiropractor, Robert Clifford was his name, fabulous. And he got me back running, and we did some trials, and we said, hey, this is as good as it's going to get. Went down to Christchurch 3 days before my heats for the 1500 meters. So it was very close, but of course, having watched Dick Taylor win the 10,000 meters in the opening days, just inspired every New Zealander, every Kiwi, and every runner. And it was so good because Dick was such a cool guy, and it always was just the highlight of the games, no doubt about that.
And that was the fastest time that you'd run for that distance, wasn't it?
Oh, the 1500.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. My fastest up until then was 3:37.
Yeah.
So I took nearly 4 seconds off.
It was the fifth fastest time at the.
Well, I got to say, Sean, that I knew it was the race of the century. I knew what we were doing, and I was looking up, and Bailey was out there, and I knew that Jipko and Walker were right on my shoulder, and Boyd, because I'd run Boyd in 72, and coming up the home straight, I just couldn't get that turnover, and I think it was a little bit of lack of training. But hey, I ran the race of a lifetime, and I crossed the finish line. And my little mate, Brian Crouch from Australia, who finished just behind me in fifth, we looked up at the scoreboard and we saw the results coming up. And I said, Crouchy, I've just run the fifth fastest time in history, and I finished fourth in the race.
I love
Unbelievable.
It. Yeah.
So we knew, and then we realized that both Bailey and Walker had broken the existing world record, and that was by Jim Ryan, which we thought was unattainable in those days. Incredible.
Amazing moment in New Zealand sport.
Yeah.
1975, running 5,000 meters by then, and you were ranked first in the world that year.
Yeah. Well, what I realized, Sean, in 74, because we went on to race in Europe, and I almost set the world record over 2 mile, 3,000 meters. I won a lot of races, and I went to run against Brendan Foster, who was the world record holder, and very, very close second at the Commonwealth Games the year before. And I just knew, seeing Walker and Bailey and some of these young kids coming on, I just thought it's time to move out of the 1500 and move up a distance, because although I know I'm going to be running a lot more 1500s, I will go to the 5,000 meters being faster than anybody else. And so 75, I ran selected 3 5,000 meter races, each one against the world record holder, the best European champion, and beat them all, won them all, and ended up with the #1 ranking in the world for 5,000 meters. That gave me the confidence, of course, with 76 Montreal.
Brilliant. Tell us about Montreal.
Well, we went to Europe. And ran through Scandinavia with the New Zealand team, and went to a lot of good training areas. John and I and Quaxi were very, very great friends, great training competitors. We never raced each other in training. We never tried to assert any dominance over one another. We just did our training. Sometimes it didn't work to train together because of our program. And going on to Montreal, of course, we were dealing with the threat of the boycott. We were harassed and bullied by a lot of athletes that if New Zealand go to the Olympic Games, then the African countries will boycott. And what were we doing? And can't we change things? And why can't we do this? And it was out of our hands. We couldn't do a thing about it. And of course, as it progressed, we were threatened. We were told that if we walked in the opening ceremonies, there could be trouble for New Zealand athletes. So a lot of us chose not to walk in the opening ceremonies. So it was a very tough time for New Zealand Olympic team, because we were being singled out because of rugby playing, the All Blacks playing, well, in fact, New Zealand rugby playing in South Africa. I had turned down invitations to go to South Africa because I knew that they were racially selected races, and that wasn't in my nature. So, so really, with the African athletes out of the race, it changed things. It definitely was. It was going to be a lot different running, and I think if I had a choice, I would have had them in the race, because they were going to make it a lot different. The heats came around. Brendan Foster and I ran an Olympic time. We broke the Olympic record in the heats, and some of the other athletes went up to 45 seconds a minute slower than we did in their heats. So that it was pretty obvious what was going to happen, and the race unfolded in a way that I wasn't that comfortable, but felt with a lap to go that I've got the speed over these guys. And my brother said to me, "You've got to be in control of that race with 300 meters to go." And I wasn't. I was sitting back because I felt confident. And when we got down to 200 meters to go, suddenly I was fourth. Then I went back to fifth, and I panicked. And I went out into lane 3 and tried to run round everybody. And if you look at lane 3, as opposed to lane 1, it's about 8 yards longer to go around the bend in lane 3. And that, as we headed into the straight, and we strode for the finish line, and I think I just started to find that I was starting to tie up. I was just not able to get back up. And we all crossed the finish line. I knew that Viren had won. I knew Quaxi would be in second, but I thought that I might have just grabbed that bronze medal, but it turned out it wasn't so. Yeah, very, very disappointing.
I'm with Rod Dixon, one of the best athletes of all time. I'm going to keep moving along because I'm getting quite a few questions in here, and I do want to spend a little bit of time with those. So, 1982, you took third place in the IAAF World Cross Country Championship. But what I want to talk about now is probably the moment that really defined Rod Dixon. You'd gone to check out the New York marathon in 1982. Why did you do that, by the way? What was that all about?
Actually, we'll just go back to 1980, where, obviously the Olympic Games are on again, and I qualified, and I was running the 5,000, 10,000, and then the next thing is the boycott. The United States boycotts Russia, and they did a deal with Muldoon. We know they did, to get New Zealand to join the boycott. And now here's Walker and Dixon. We were in Philadelphia, on our way to the Olympic Games, and a journalist came up and said, "What are you guys going to do now that New Zealand's boycotting?" And I looked at Walker, and he looked at me, and I go, we don't know we're boycotting. Oh, it's on the media. The media know about it. And even our team manager didn't know. So all these decisions have been made without any consultation. And that was devastating. It was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. And so at that point, I said, I'm not going to carry on running track. I'm going to do this road race thing. And I was in Philadelphia, and there's a 10K race that following weekend. And so I stayed on while the others went off to Europe. I stayed on and ran the road race, and I finished third in that very first time, just in training shoes. And I said, I can do this. This is something I can do. So that's when I moved to the US to do road racing, and a whole new journey, a whole new energy, a whole new incredible experience of running road races. But what was happening is that as I was running the fastest 10Ks and the fastest ran the US 10-mile championships, won that, held records for that. And then somebody said, you should try and run a half marathon. I thought, oh, I don't know whether I'll run that. But then I did. And I ran the half marathon and I said, yes, I know this. And then the next year, I actually set the world record for it.
Oh, yeah,
so,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was so in 82, Fred LeBeau from the New York City Marathon, said, why don't you run the marathon? And I said, not this year, Fred. And Chris Brasher, who created the London Marathon, he said, we hear that you're thinking about a marathon. We'd love you to run London. Boston wanted me to run, but Kevin Ryan, who lived in a great New Zealand marathon runner, lived in Boston. And I went with Kevin and he took me out on the Boston Marathon course. And I thought, no, this is not my kind of course. It's too much downhill for me. I'm 6'2", 155 pounds. I'm way too heavy. So when you look at the legends of running, they're all smaller runners. So I knew it was going to Boston. I wasn't that fussed about London. And of course, in those days, I was very, very heavily sponsored by Pan Am and by Saucony, the shoe company, and Pepsi Cola, who did the 10,000 meter series. And I thought New York was going to be it. I went and had a look at New York course, and Fred LeBeau took me around the course at 4:30 in the morning to have a look at it. And I kind of just sensed that this was my kind of run. This is where I'd do very well. So 82, I went to watch the incredible race with Salazar and Gomez, incredible fire. And I went out and the next morning for a run around Central Park. And as Arnold would say, I'll be back. I'll be back. So I came, yeah.
So 1983, as you head into the New York Marathon, you are in probably the best shape you've ever been in, aren't you? You're not going there. You're not going there to participate. You're going there to win the damn thing.
Yeah. It's. I think when I realized in 82, then I came back to New Zealand and I sat down with my brother John, and we talked about running a marathon. And because I had run the Pastor Marathon in Auckland in 82, in May of 82, as a trial. John said to me, he said, why don't you run that marathon in Auckland and just treat it as a training run. Just go out there and run and get the feel for the distance and running with the run. And the first person I called was Jack Foster. And I said, Jack, I know you're running because you want to be the first 50-year-old to run under 2:20 for the marathon. And so I said, can I run with you? And he said, of course you can, Dixon. So I ran with, I remember I didn't know anything about marathon really. And I went to the start and I said to Jack, I said, I've got to run 26 miles. So why is everybody warming up? Why? I mean, I don't want to run 29 miles. I want to only run 26. And Jack said, just do your plyometrics and do your exercising and use the first mile warm up. And so that's what we did. I ran with Jack for the first mile, settling in. And then we started getting down through Newmarket. And he said, young man, I think you better get up there with the leaders. This is a piece of cake for you. And I said, I actually like banana cake, so I better get going. So off we went. I caught the leaders going up through the Domain and along through Crane Happy Road and down down through Freeman's Bay. And I just started to feel really, really comfortable. I went down underneath the Auckland Harbour Bridge, out through the port area, And then we had to go out to St Heliers and turn around and come back. And I'm running with the leaders and Kevin Ryan and all these Orlando Pizzolata, who went on to win the New York Marathon after me. But the more I ran, the better and more comfortable I felt. And we got out to St Heliers, and I said, okay, I'm going to put in a little bit of a spurt here. This is how I feel good enough to do this. And I quickly distanced myself from the field and ran very, very comfortably for the last 3-4 miles. Finished across the finish line. I ran back to welcome all the other competitors. And then I remember I went down and jumped off the wharf into the harbour to have a swim. That's when I got a cramp. There was
the New York Marathon. Talk us through it.
Wow. Okay, so so I knew what I was dealing with, and then I went back, and this time back in '83, I didn't run 30-odd races. I went into training, and that's what John said. Stop your racing, do your training. You're building a pyramid here. Lay the foundation and build it, and that's what Lydia used in his training principles. The pyramid. You lay your foundation, and as you move up. And so this was the whole journey. And I trained like I'd never trained before, focused on one goal. I had a bit of ADD in my youngerhood, and I was easily distracted and drawn into other things. But this was the first time that I had been focused the whole time. And each day's training was building that pyramid. It was like building these stones. And I just knew, wow, I've never felt this before. And all the trials and all the things I did. And I remember one trial I ran was to do a 3,000 meters, 2 mile on the track. And I called John and I said, John, I think I want to run the mile. And he said, why do you want to run the mile? I said, I don't know, but I've always been fascinated by the mile, and I want to go out and do that instead of the 2 mile. He said, go ahead, do it. Well, I went out on a high school track. My friend came and we found the mile mark, and I went out and I ran solo 3:58.7. And that's when I knew, close it on. You've got it. Money's in the bank. Time to go and spend it.
Really? I love it.
Yeah. That was when I knew. And for the first time in my life, as I flew out of Reading, Pennsylvania, to go to New York, and I looked down at all the countryside and all the forests and all through the Amish country that I used to run every weekend. And I knew that I had a certain confidence that I'd never had in my life before. And went to New York and went to the expo and saw people. And I remember Fred LeBeau, they had a special bus for the elite athletes. And he said to me, now you make sure you're at the Hilton tomorrow morning at 5:30, because the special bus is taking you out. Now I went over there and I looked at it and I thought, no, I'm not going to catch that bus. I'm going to go in the public bus. I'm going to go with all the runners. And I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting in a bus with all my competitors looking at one another for an hour. I had no interest in that. I got on the public bus. They were drinking coffee and eating donuts and laughing and talking and doing backflips, and I loved it. I had the time of my life. So I got to the start line in my conditions and the way I wanted to get there. I wanted the energy from other people, the energy of the people. And so when they standing on the start line there, and as you do, you sometimes cast your mind back. And within a few seconds, I was able to say, this is it. I couldn't do anything more. Whatever happens today, now, will be the defining for me and what I've done, because there's nothing more I can do. There's no stone left unturned. And the cannon fired and off we went. And course, this was just the start of it, because now in those days you didn't have all this telemetry. You didn't have wristwatches with all your telemetry on it, and so I just wrote on my fingers my 5-mile split, my 10-mile split, my 13-mile split, my 15-mile split, and my 18-mile split. So I knew exactly what I wanted to run, and as I ran, it's a bit of a roller coaster, and I've talked about this before. But the first 5 miles you're feeling pretty good, and but you look up and there's the clock, and it's exactly what I've got written for 5 miles. I was right exactly what I wanted to run. So I said, this is the pace, stay with the pace. And I went through 10 mile, exactly the same. But the leaders were ahead of me at this point. And when I went through 13 mile, I knew exactly where I was and what I was doing, and I was running my race, not somebody else's, my race. And I was very, very careful, because the camber of the road, you don't spend too much time on the right and too much time on the left, in the middle, on the right, on the left, balancing the muscles. And these are all things that John and I talked about, that this was not just go from start to finish. This was a journey, like a game of chess. You've got 50, 60 moves ahead of you, and you've got to be very, very careful on how you balance it all, and what you do, and what influences come in the race. And so I stayed with that plan, my plan, all the way through. And it really wasn't till going down First Avenue, about 15, 16 miles, that I started to really notice that things were getting into rhythm, still going through a few bad patches. Leaders were still way, way down the street. I could barely see them. I could see the pace car, but I couldn't see the runners. And then we went through Brooklyn, over the bridges, and then I was told, of course, I was into second place now, but I couldn't see the leader. Couldn't see Jeff Smith, because the streets were kind of short. So you'd come around a corner and you'd look down, and he was gone.
You were going the fastest you could actually go at that point as you're closing in on the leader, aren't you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
going to go a bit faster.
Yeah. No. I knew I had to stay with my pace, because I knew I was. It was very confusing, because a lot of the people who were giving me the splits weren't accurate splits. So I'd come past and somebody said, "Oh, you're 10 seconds behind," and I go, "There's no way I'm 10 seconds behind." Well, and the next person, "Oh, you're 40 seconds behind." Very confusing. So I just had to stay with my plan, and that just keep running. And I had to get safely through to 23 miles. And I know that at 20 miles is what I call the halfway part for a marathon. 20 miles. You've got 6 miles to go. 10K. How many 10Ks have I run in my life? And so I knew get safely through to 20, and then go through to 23, and then what you've got left, unfold it. And at 23, I could start to see him. And then ABC had a spotter that was on a bike that was connected to the studio, and he was getting accurate splits.
Yeah.
And so he would tell me, "You are exactly 18 seconds behind. You are exactly 19 seconds behind." So I knew those were 2 splits. And I said, I'm not catching him, and he's not slowing down.
Yeah.
So, but what I did notice as I got closer to him, I said that he's not running the tangents like I was.
Right down the middle.
Yeah, he's running the white line, the middle of the road. And that, as Scott Dixon would tell you, it's not the shortest point. Apex to apex is the shortest point of the road. And if you've got so much fuel in your tank, you want to be running economy. You don't want to be spurting up and down, round. So I started to get into a rhythm, and I realized that now I was 15 seconds. 14 seconds, 12 seconds. So I knew I wasn't running any faster, and he wasn't really slowing down. He was just running further.
Yeah.
And so as we got to Columbus Circle, now I could feel that I was really within striking distance. Went through Columbus Circle, out back onto the Central Park, and I remember, and I thought to myself, right, what if he's actually waiting for me to catch him, and then he's going to spurt ahead? What if he's actually...
Did that really go through your mind?
Yeah, because I would run races where I would make a move that I hope that I would gain seconds on someone, and then I said, right, now you've got to catch that back before I make a move again. So I knew how I used to think, and I'm thinking he might be why would he try and keep the gap? Why doesn't he let Dixon use all his energy to catch me, and then I'll sprint away and devastate him? And I'm thinking, whoa. So I had to turn that round, and I said, right, what I've got to do is I've got to go and catch him, but not go past him, beside him. I've got to go on the apex of the turn. And so I was coming, and I could see I was catching him. And then, and in fact, if you see the video, I caught him right at 26 miles. And from that, when I saw him, he was in the middle of the road, and the apex was down to my right. I went down through that apex of that corner, and then over this, right across the road to the next apex, which is a left-hand turn. And I know that as soon as I got in this peripheral, that I would go as hard as I could for at least 100 yards. And so that when he saw me, I was flashing past. I wasn't just edging past.
Yeah.
And so, and you look at the video, his whole head, he gets, and then he realized I actually wasn't running away from him. And he tried to catch me, but, 2 corners later, I look up and here's the finish line. Unbelievable. And
you did look a couple of times, didn't you? Just
yes.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches say never look round. I go, hold on. Why do race cars have mirrors on them? So you've got to know what's going on behind you. So I didn't have a problem.
As you shot past him and decided in your head, I'm going to put the gas on here, and he's going to know that I'm going to demoralize him. Did you, as you ran past him, did you did you have that feeling of, I have actually got this? He's actually...
No, I didn't. I think probably if anything, I was at that point. As soon as I got him and went past him, I was running scared. As soon as that, suddenly I realized, what if he does come back? What if he does have something? And so all I had to do was just focus. And as I said, I came up to that next corner, and I could see the corner, and I could hear the crowd, or the finish line. And that was only a couple of 100 yards away. And I just said, you've got to run, and just do everything you did when you were running the mile. Go for your arms, shorten your stride, pump, and just sprint like you should have done in 1976 and cross that finish line. And so it wasn't until I crossed that finish line that I knew that I had won the race. And that's where the arms went up, and I went down and kissed the earth and thanked the spirit, because that was my defining moment. That was what I should have done. No, I shouldn't have done that. It's just what it was. But that was the defining moment of who I was. And all those disappointments back 76, boycotts, all just left me. I was able to suddenly be at peace with myself, that this was who I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. What else was rushing through your head at that point as you crossed that line?
I think a lot of that, the defining moments of who I was, the love of my parents, my brother, my family, all the people who'd been part of my life, for sure. The influences and the incredible inspiration I got from people. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it was.
Well, you're getting quite emotional thinking about it even now.
Yeah. About that 37 years later, I can still do it. Whew.
It's amazing. Hey, I was talking to my brother and sister about it. Because as I said, I was 13 at the time. My brother was 12. My sister was 9. And it's one of our fondest childhood memories of actually just watching that together. And they were messaging each other before the interview. And I don't normally get too nervous about these things, but I think it's the you know, you go, oh my God, I'm chatting to Rod Dixon, because it was a great moment in our childhood. I can remember my father would have probably been up and down on the couch crying when it came to great moments in New Zealand sport. But it really was one of those things where you know, you remember it. If you're sort of around my age, you remember it for the rest of your life. It was just a great moment. Hey, I've got some questions that I've got through some from some friends, and I'll go through them now if that's okay. And then what we'll do is I want to talk about what you do now, because what you've actually done for young people is just mind-blowing in itself. But if it's okay, I'll ask a few questions now. A couple of these are from a very good friend of mine, and because you've spent so many times so much time in the States, you probably won't be aware of who he is. But his name's Dominic Harvey, and he's a very well-known radio broadcaster in New Zealand. He's had a stellar career. He still continues to be a great broadcaster. But he also, him and his mother Susan, have run so many marathons in their life. It's not fun. And Dominic actually last year, I think it was, ran 5 marathons in 5 days.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do know that guy now. I do. Absolutely. Yeah. I was watching it. Friends were sending me this stuff. Yeah.
Amazing person.
Very cool.
Wasn't that cool? Yeah. He raised
totally.
He raised a couple of $100,000 for this. And he just went out there and someone said to me before he started, I've known him for about 20 or 30 years. They said, "Oh, do you think he'll do it?" I said, "I've got absolutely zero doubt. He'd do 7 in 7 days if we needed to." He's just one who loves to run. But he's given me a few, and so does his mum, Susan, who's amazing. Here's a few questions. Do you think a Kiwi could ever win the New York Marathon again?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good answer. What makes it so good?
Yeah. Sorry?
What makes the Kenyans so good?
Genetics, DNA, but of course we know now that they are the most prolific dopers in history. So it's a big issue, huge issue. I mean, let's face it. Scott Dixon wouldn't put in regular gas into his car. He puts high octane fuel. And so, you know, the Kenyans have got the DNA, and then these coaches and these physicians and doctors, and they are finding a way to enhance their DNA, and doping and performance enhancing drugs are rampant, and it's out of control. And the Africans are leading the way, and I have to say it.
Okay. How long would it take you to do a marathon now?
Well, if I was able to do like the Auckland Marathon, because I think there's about 30 pubs on the way, so it could take me a couple of days.
It would take you a couple of days?
Yeah, because I'd want to stop and have a beer with all my friends.
I love it.
Now, the last marathon I ran, now get this, when I came back to New Zealand after winning the New York City Marathon, you know, Pan Am named 47 after me. It was the Pan Am Clipper Rod Dixon. And we flew into Auckland on it, and that was all pretty cool. And my daughters, Kate and Emma, were at immigration waiting for me, and we had a press conference. And so I came out of immigration, and they were already in the press conference. And then I walked, and both Kate and Emma ran up and came with me and sat on right near me, and we did the press conference with my two daughters.
Oh,
and somebody asked, when is your next marathon? And Emma took the microphone and said, I'm running a marathon with my daddy one day. Sean, 25 years after that, Emma and I sitting on the start line of the New York City Marathon 2008. And we ran every step of the way together.
Beautiful.
And finished holding hands together. And we ran 3 hours and 20. So she's a good little runner.
Yeah.
And so that was an incredible moment for me to be able to do that with, and Kate, my other daughter, Hugh, my son, and Cecile have all been part of my life and what we've done together. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
You're a great man. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. If you had the luxury of living and training, in Kenya like the Robertson twins do, I don't know who they are, do you think you could have been even better?
No. I believe my everything, the journey that I had was exactly right for me in my spirit.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, training with my running club here in Nelson was a huge factor with all the club members and the family. It was the running family, the camaraderie of the family. My brother was a huge influence.
Yeah, it's a true partnership, isn't it, you and John?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what I would have been nice to have had more opportunities for funding in my day, but it just wasn't around. We didn't do it, and in fact, if anything, we were actually bullied by the athletic people, and so that was always a hard journey. And in fact, in part, that's why I actually went away in 1980, is because not only for the boycott, but also to the government interfering with sport, and I had no control of what I was doing. The powers were controlling us. So at least when I went to the US to run road racing, I was free of all this harassment and bullying from amateur athletics.
Do you think Kip Chugi, so here say it, Chugi or Chugi, do you think he ever be able to run a sub-2 in an actual race?
Yes, yeah. You've probably got about 10 or 12 athletes that are all capable of running sub 2 hours now.
Okay.
Of course, the latest issue is the shoes. I mean, it's a huge controversy over the shoes. And I saw 3 years ago. I said, hey, the thing is, Sean, I'm a shoe man. I made all my shoes. I personally handmade all the shoes. I know what's going on. And when I saw what these shoes were doing, I said, those shoes are giving. This is where it is. And they're doing something with shoes. And of course, sure enough, they are. And they've discovered that these shoes can give up to 7% improvement. Now you take 7% of 2 hours of 2 hours. Well, say the world record at the time, 2 hours 2. So take 7% of that. You're going to go under 2 hours.
Now, you said earlier you talked about when you went to Sir Edmund Hillary and you knocked on the door and you gave him the medal, and he basically gave the medal back and said, something, I'm paraphrasing, but give back, and this is what you have done for many, many years. And once again, not everybody in New Zealand will actually be aware of what you have done with your life in the States. Can you please talk us through it, what you do with kids marathons?
Well, actually, it started in Lee, which is Warkworth, with the local Lee school, and we were looking at raising funds to help the school because budgets were being cut, and Lockwood Smith was the Minister of Education at the time, and he lived up there in the county of Rodney. And we went to him and says, "Why are you harassing these schools?" And they said, "Well, it's all about funding, and that we don't have the funding available to them." Now, Wilson Winneray, Sir Wilson, he lived just down the road in Latham Bay, so I went and saw him, and then we got together with Graham Davey, and we said, let's find a way to do something for this community. Now, it wasn't a matter about a handout. It was trying to find a way to give the hand up, to help the community, to help themselves. And so I said, well, look, what we should do, and you know what I've done all around the world with these fun runs and the City of Los Angeles Marathon, why don't we have a fun run to raise funds for the community? And I'll make sure that I'll get thousands of people turning up. And they said, okay. So what we did is I said, but what I'm going to do first, I'm going to put a pin in the map in a 30-mile radius from Lee. I'm going to go to every school and get all the kids into training, because I know the power is in the kids. If you get the kids connected with what they're good at, and that is run, jump, play, having fun, get them into training so that they come Lee to run their final mile. In fact, it was a 2K, the final mile. We'll get them to train at least the distance of a marathon over 10, 12 weeks. So it's a couple of miles a week, and it's about half a mile a day. Go out around your school ground and run round and tell your teacher you ran half a mile, and that's good. And the teachers got into it because the teachers and the principal, they're totally committed to their students anyway. And then suddenly we noticed a bit of a groundswell from the parents, because the parents were seeing the kids were happy. They were on this project. Now, this is 1990. And so what we did is, because I said that, I knew, because the kids, I said, now on Saturday morning, you've got to make sure you get up nice and early to get mum and dad to take you to Lee School to run your final mile. Because you know what the kids, your parents are like. Parents say, oh, we're too busy. We can't go to do that. But I said, don't go into the bedroom before 6 o'clock in the morning to wake them up. Go in and get them. But you see, the thing is, the kids inspired their family because the kids were doing something they loved. And they came, and the first year, I think we raised quite a few $1,000s. Then the next year, I invited my friends like Ian Smith and Black Caps and All Blacks, and Dick Quacks came up, and Wilson Winneray got a few of his people, and it was just fabulous. And what was really powerful was Lale Haddon, who was a former Maori All Black at Pakari. He inspired the nation. He inspired the people. And Olivia, his daughter, came and ran. And so the second and third years, we were raising a lot of money. We built, I think we ended up building another classroom for the school, and redid the swimming pool for them. But what it did, it started, and I realized the power of the community, the power of the PTA, teachers, the parents. And that's what can make these things work in your community. And that's what I really took away when I was invited back to the US to work on the Los Angeles Marathon in New York and Boston. And that's when I said, I'll do that if you help me with my kids program. And so now in Los Angeles alone, 40,000 kids every year go through the program. We had 500,000 kids go through the program. And I have a high school mentor leadership program, which runs where in a lot of the states, high schoolers have to do community service. And I get them to do that at their local elementary school because, hey, you're already on the track team, you're on the football team, you play lacrosse. Why don't you go down to your local elementary school and teach the kids ABC, agility, balance, coordination. And the kids will show you how fast they can run. And it's just taken off. And I've got kids now who come from inner city, underserved communities, who come up to me and they say, hey, Rod Dixon, you don't remember me, but your program and my high school mental leadership program got me a scholarship to college. And I'm the first person in my family ever to go to college. So I know the journey's happening. It's happening.
Amazing.
For a whole new generation. Yeah,
hey,
cool.
You've given me over an hour of your time. Very, very generous. It's been a real thrill. You're yes, you're a great athlete, but you're an even better human being. You really are. You're a fantastic guy, and hopefully we'll get over this virus soon. And I'll do some traveling, and I'll come over to the States, and I'll buy you a coffee because you're a bloody great guy.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, first of all, you're allowed to come down to Marahau and Kaiteri National Forest, and I'll take you for a run through the forest.
You're a good man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. Take care.
Everybody. Cheers.